Welcome to the Pat White Show.
Well, if you're someone who follows the media in the last couple of weeks, you've been hearing a lot about Stephen Colbert. That's the late night guy on CBS who replaced David Letterman. Well, a lot of fingers have been pointing on this one. They're all saying, well, the fault of this is Donald Trump because he wouldn't allow CBS and Paramount to be sold to Sky Media unless that they acquiesced to what he wanted, saying that Stephen Colbert was dead and keeping in mind that CBS had to pay Donald Trump $16 million for, well, wrongly editing their news, if you will. Now, here's the problem. Over the weekend, two columnists came out and said a little something a bit different. One was a gentleman by the name of William Cohen from Puck Media, and his column was featured in the New York Times. And the second column was in the Washington Post. You all know who the Washington Post is. That's from Megan McArdle. Both of them said, you know what the problem is? The problem is people ain't watching the late night shows like they used to. And let me give you the information on Stephen Colbert. Between 2017 and 2018, he had a nightly audience of 3.1 million. Now, 3.1 million, 11:30 at night, is pretty doggone good. Last year, his audience was 1.9 million. So it went from 3.1 to 1.9. He'd already lost 40% of his advertisers. Now, here's a show that had a cast, a crew of 200 people. Now, Stephen Colbert was making $20 million. The budget for this particular event was $100 million. Well, CBS figured, hey, we'd be making big money, making 140 billion, whatever it is, 120 million. They figured they'd be making a lot of money because, well, people supposedly were watching Colbert. The problem is people's tastes have changed. You see, in the old days, people used to watch people like Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was funny. And frankly, he lambasted his network, but the network was printing money hand over fist. David Letterman was on CBS, and he too was funny. Well, problem with Stephen Colbert is it wasn't funny. Yeah, whether you like it or not, Stephen Colbert was political. That was his jibe. That was his game. And that audience went from 3.1 million to 1.9 million because people were changing their viewing habits. Today, do you think people watch late night TV, 11:30 at night to 1 o'clock in the morning? The average age is 68. The younger people, they're watching things like TikTok, Hulu, whatever they've got available to them. They're watching that, and they are not watching late night TV. I'm sorry, because here's the big deal, whether you like it or not. The demographics that advertisers want on TV or any place else, frankly, is 18 to 49 years of age. 18 to 49. And Stephen Colbert only had a couple of 100,000. Yeah, that's right. Couple of 100,000 out of 1.9 million. That's because the rest of the people watching were over the age of 60, 68 years of age on average. There's the problem, folks. Late night, as we know it, is dying. TV, the regular TV we know, is dying because people are watching YouTube and, like I said, the TikToks and the Hulus and the Netflix. They're watching all of those things. And I'll tell you what, the likes of Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon are probably numbered because those two are going to be disappearing because the audience is changing. Everything is changing. It's a changing world. That's the thing about the world. It's always changing. Late night ain't what the late night used to be. Like I said, back in the old days, hey, Carson was hilarious. Letterman with his top 10, funny. But what we have right now, it ain't that much. And young people are switching off to something else. So if you're wondering why what really happened, the truth of the matter is Sky Media saw that they need to cut down on the dead wood that's costing them money. And Colbert's show was costing them money. And frankly, why do you think the Paramount got rid of CBS? Because they know TV networks are a dying commodity. CBS was the first to know it, The others may soon be following. Just watch and wait. Well, for the past few months, the only thing we've heard about on television or radio is either the Epstein story or the Trump story about Russia collusion, Russiagate, I think they call it. That's all we've heard for the last few months. And not much else stuff is going on. But there's a big thing that's been happening that maybe you haven't heard about, and I'm going to discuss it for a little bit. It has to do with the ground that you're standing on, Mother Earth. Well, Mother Earth right now is going through some convolutions, call it what you will. These are earthquakes, and they're happening all around the world, especially in an area called the Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim runs pretty much up the west coast of the United States, heads over, and goes down, starts in Russia, and goes all the way down past in the China area. So it's like a big, giant circle, if you will, that is cracks in the earth. Because the earth is not a smooth planet, folks. The earth has areas in it, areas that overlap. There are fault lines. You get one moving and another moving. Things happen with earthquakes. And with earthquakes, the ground actually moves. Those are fault lines. Now, as a kid, I remember hearing about the San Andreas Fault when I was a kid growing up. It's in California. You actually go out there and kind of see where it is. So it's a line that runs. And they say, well, someday the San Andreas Fault is going to erupt and the entire west coast of California is going to fall in the ocean. Some people might applaud that. But the problem is that maybe not everybody will. Well, here's the problem. We've got volcanoes going off from Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii. It's happening all around the world. Things are going on. We're getting earthquakes that are, 6 and 7 levels. Tsunami warnings are going up. Something's going on. What is the Earth doing right now? What's happening with the Earth? Told you some time back that the Earth's magnetic pole, what we work with magnetic north, we call it, is moving. And it seems to be moving toward the top of the world and maybe moving towards Siberia, which may mean what's inside of the Earth, the molten core, might be moving itself, maybe adjusting itself. Who knows what's going on? You go over to Hawaii on the Big Island, you can see the volcano, Kilauea. That's spewing all the time. It's happening. Iceland just had some fissures open up, and they've got a lot of lava going on. Something is happening in the world. Well, are there earthquakes out there that are causing things to happen? Yes. Are there volcanoes out there that may be getting ready to blow? Well, let me tell you about one that happened back in 1980. And it was a gentleman was hiking. His name was Robert Landsberg. And he was on a place called Mount Adams. This is about over near Mount St. Helens. This was back in May of 1980. So anyway, he's out there 30 miles away from Mount St. Helens. And I'm telling you, he's 30 miles away. Photographing, that's what he's doing, taking pictures. He's sitting there taking pictures as Mount St. Helens explodes on May the 18th of 1980. He's taking pictures 30 miles away. And that cloud, that mushroom that came out of Mount St. Helens, that whole side that collapsed, all the particles in the air, the ash, everything else. Mr. Landsberg realized he was not going to live. 30 miles. He was going to die. Took his camera, wound the film back in, put it in a case, put the case inside of a backpack, and he laid on top of it, trying to preserve the film in his camera because he didn't think he was going to live, and he didn't. His body was discovered 17 days later under pounds and miles of, just eons amount of ash. Covered him over totally. They had barely got lucky and found him. Well, as it turns out, they developed the film that he had in his camera in his backpack, and the National Geographic published the photos. Here's what it looks like. That's what he was looking at. Here's what he was seeing 30 miles away. I bring this up because in the state of Washington, they have a Mount Rainier. Mount Rainier is one of the big mountains in Washington. So it's between Seattle, Tacoma area. It's towering. Well, Mount St. Rainier, the largest earthquake it had recently. They're getting rumblings, and I mean massive rumblings are happening under Mount Rainier. Like 300. It's happening all the time. It's shaking big time. what is happening with Mount Rainier? Is Mount Rainier getting ready to blow? Well, if it does, you're talking Seattle and Tacoma right there. What on earth could happen to those people when Mr. Landsberg was killed when Mount St. Helens blew up and he was 30 miles away? That mountain is right there between Seattle and Tacoma. Wouldn't be a good plan. Now, last eruption of Mount Rainier was 1,000 years ago. But nobody knows what it's going to do because everything is happening. Earthquakes and volcanoes are happening all around the Pacific Rim. They just had a 7.1 just off the coast of Russia. Thought I'd have a tsunami. It didn't happen. But that's what's going on. Up in Alaska, the Sitkin volcano and the Aleutian Islands, it's starting to bubble up a little bit. And there's craters all over the place that are happening. So Alaska along the Aleutian chain, volcano area. Kenai Peninsula, that's getting south of Anchorage. That's got earthquakes going on there, small volcanoes also. Something is going on. But the biggest two that we have to worry about, there's one off the coast of Oregon, and it's underground, it's underwater, it's in the ocean. It's called the Axial Seamount. It's a massive undersea volcano underwater. It's about a couple of 100 feet deep, but it's bubbling. And they think that could blow. Now, they've got cameras on it, so they can watch it 24 hours a day if it blows. But if that blows, that could create a tsunami of epic proportions because it could be a giant volcano in the ocean that blows up. And worse than that, Yellowstone Park. Everybody knows Yellowstone. It's a great place to go visit. People love it. They go see it. All the craters, the geysers, all the ones that are erupting all the time, right? They come up, Old Faithful. Trouble is, that entire area is a giant volcano, folks. A giant volcano. If that thing were to blow, it could kill, by theory, half of the people in the United States. One volcano. It's that big. So, what are we going to do? Well, what can we do? We can monitor it. We can take a look at it, keep an eye on it. But if Mother Nature decides to throw up, Mother Nature could throw up in a way we could never imagine. Maybe it's out in the ocean, or maybe it's places like Yellowstone. I just want to tell you what's going on so you realize underneath us, the world is bubbling. And if that bubbling turns into a massive explosion, we're not sure where it will be, and we're not sure what it'll do. But it could be more damaging than anything any nuclear bomb could ever create. Mother Nature can be that destructive. And let's pray she keeps it under control. If you're a basketball fan, here's the latest information that's come out of the WNBA. It now appears that their star guard, Caitlin Clark from the University of Iowa, second year in the league, probably will not be returning. Now, nobody can say exactly when that edict would be over, but right now they're saying that injury, that groin injury she suffered, well, apparently she's still having work done on it. And whatever that is, trust me, if you've had that injury before, you know it takes a long time to heal. Mother Nature is not very forgiving if you mess that one up. And that's kind of one of those muscles that, well, no telling how long it's going to take to get itself repaired. Now, she's still in rehab. The doctors are still working with her. But for the time being, it appears that she's going to be on the sideline, sort of like a secondary coach, getting the girls up and going. Now, most of you are going to say, well, that's going to be a big problem. What about the future? Well, the future is this. Maybe, just maybe, she could come back for the playoff if the team makes the playoff. That's certainly a possibility. But if that's not a possibility, she could be out for the rest of the year, which would be unfortunate, and I'll tell you why it's a big deal. Because the collective bargaining unit for their agreement ends in October of this year. Since she showed up on the scene, the ratings have gone through the roof. 2.3 million people in today's age watching one basketball game of women. That's primetime stuff, folks. Primetime stuff. But when she's gone, the ratings drop down around 50 to 55%. So it just goes to show you, she is the catalyst. She's the key to the entire engine that makes things work. And if she's out, possibly the public, those who follow her and follow the women's basketball, might say, don't want to watch it. I'm not interested anymore because Caitlin Clark is not playing. But here's what's interesting. Since she has been gone, the team is starting to coalesce. They're actually starting to come together. Yes, they have been beaten, but not by much. Well, for one particular game. But they're starting to show a little bit of cohesiveness. They're actually getting together. They're actually moving the ball around. They're actually working as a team without Caitlin Clark. She's on the sideline coaching them, telling them what to do, and I understand that. But they're actually working, and some of these other young ladies are picking up the slack. I mean, they're hitting double digits, they're doing their jobs, and they're winning basketball games. Now, is that going to help for the new contract for the WNBA? I don't think so. Because right now, there's a possibility. I know some of the players are saying, hey, we're going to walk out if we don't get what we want. Well, you can't get what you want because there ain't nothing to get. You know, for the last 27 years, this league has been losing money. I mean, you haven't figured that out yet. But every NBA team's been coughing up $1 million+ every year, some $10 to $12 million per team. So you can have your payroll of $76,000 a year, which is chump change, I agree. But you ain't going to get NBA money because you ain't making NBA revenue. Now, since Caitlin Clark came along, yes, the interest has gone up. I mean, take a look at the average number of people that show up for games in the league. Look at this chart. Now, if you really want to see what's going on, take a look at this document. This shows you what's going on with the teams, what kind of numbers they're drawing. And take a look at this. There it is, the Indiana Fever. Average draw, 16,590 per game. Their total is 381,000, and their lowest was 3,265. But the highest, take a look, 20,409. What does that tell you? And I think that's what they're playing to on the road as well. Home games and on the road. Number 2, Golden State coming in second, 14-4. That's a far cry from 16-5. Caitlin Clark she's the seed that makes Indiana work, but she's also the main golden goose for the full WNBA. So like I said, could her absence be a problem with the new contract? Well, very much so it could. But how it turns out, well, that's anybody's guess. But now you take a look, see who's the big players and who's got the big numbers. Right now, the big numbers in the league, the Indiana Fever, something you ought to know about. Obviously, the number 1 team is the Fever. But look at the size. Look at how many people are attending women's games since she came along. It's a big deal. It has changed things. So will the agreement get itself worked out? Will they get a new agreement? I don't know. Is it possible that the players could strike? Yes. Is it a bigger possibility that the owners could perform a lockout? That one, my friends, is an even bigger yes. So you got Caitlin out, your stars out, your audience starts to drop, and with that, your revenue starts to drop. Well, the people who own the teams in the WNBA and the NBA itself are going to be a little bit reluctant to give you what you're asking for. Sure, you can get a raise. I understand that. But getting share of the revenue? There ain't no revenue, ladies. Just saying. Now you know what's going on. Caitlin Clark could be out for the rest of the year. And could the WNBA be looking at a lockout or a strike? The answer to that is possibly yes. Let's wait and see what happens. But now you know. Well, the last week, folks, has been kind of difficult for us baby boomers and Gen Xers, because we've lost a number of people, and the people that we remember finally, part of our lives, part of our growing up. You had Ozzy Osbourne, Hulk Hogan, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Folks died. They're entertainment people. But one who just passed away, that one kind of struck me pretty hard, only because I remember watching him time after time, day after day, playing a game that he loved. The game was baseball. I came across the Chicago Cubs back in 1975. just moved into an apartment complex called Canterbury Green. And back then, it was probably the biggest apartment complex or one of the largest in the United States back in those days, built by a gentleman by the name of Harold Palmer. This apartment complex was so big, it had its own 18-hole golf course within the apartment complex. That's how big it was. And the post office even gave it its own zip code. That's how big it was. It was a city unto itself. And one of the things they had that nobody else in our city had was cable television. And on that cable television, one of the channels you could get was WGN. So starting in 1975, I started watching the Chicago Cubs. And ultimately, I will tell you, I became a diehard Cubs fan. And I have the pin and the certificate to prove it. Well, watching the Cubs play, and the Cubs were lovable losers, let's be honest. But they started getting some great players you watched every day. The Jody Davis kind of plays great catcher. But one of the people that was a stalwart of the team was a second baseman. He previously had played in Philadelphia, came to the Chicago Cubs. Nice looking guy, cute. Ladies loved him. He was terrific looking. Ryne Sandberg, second base. He played like nobody you've ever seen. I mean, it got near him. He caught it. Golden Gloves. Oh, yeah, he did that. He had all kinds of awards he won. But he was a great player, great guy, nice, pleasant, had a smile on his face. Didn't seem like a lot of other guys, just a regular guy. Well, Ryne Sandberg retired back in, well, I think it was 1994 when he finally hung it up. And he did that mid-season, surprisingly enough. But I watched Ryne Sandberg, and one of the things I enjoyed when Harry Carey was calling the game, when Sandberg would get up there and hit it, and Harry would go, "It might be, it could be, it is Ryne Sandberg." That's what Harry Carey did when he called a Sandberg home run. That's what I remember, Ryne Sandberg. Well, Ryne retired and ultimately was admitted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. I think that was around 2005, I believe it was. But Ryne Sandberg decided that he was going to be a manager. He was for Philadelphia for a while. Didn't last all that long. I don't think it was in his personality. But in 2024, it was January of 2024, 5 years ago, Ryne Sandberg announced that he had prostate cancer. Now, like most people did, he went through all the chemo stuff, went through all the things that you got to go through when you have prostate cancer. It's fairly common in most men. Back in, I guess it was August. I think it was August. He said he was cancer-free. People applauded. Says, "Great, Rhino's back." And Rhino would show up at the games. He'd show up at various events and what have you. The Chicago Cubs were involved with. People got to see Ryne Sandberg. Didn't kind of look like he did back then. Lost his hair, like a little bit larger. Guess eating the pizzas at wherever. But he was still Ryne Sandberg. Well, it was announced that he'd had cancer had returned. And it had come back in and hit all the other organs of his body, just sort of like we thought it was cured, then suddenly, bang, pops up in all the other organs of his body. Well, Rhino ends up passing away at the age of, 65? He was born in 1959 and 65 years of age, young in the world of today. But he was one of the Cubs. He was the Cub. Ryne Sandberg, you think of him and some of the other guys that played for the Cubs, Jody Davis behind the plate. I can think of a lot of different names. The one name you can always remember and say, Chicago Cub, Ryne Sandberg. He's gone now. He's went up to meet with all the other players that he played with, played against. Welcome into the heavens, if you will. Rhino was gone. And for those of us in that age demographic, baby boomers and Generation X, we grew up with Ryne Sandberg. There won't be another one like him, I don't suppose. But I remember the playoffs in 1989. Don Zimmer was the manager for the Cubs. Cubs had a chance to make it to the World Series, but San Francisco said, no, it ain't going to happen. But those are memories that I have. And many other folks my age, slightly younger maybe, they all remember Ryne Sandberg, second base, Chicago Cubs, and Harry Carey yelling, "It might be, it could be, it is Ryne Sandberg." Well, I would like to offer a little public service announcement for those of you that enjoy shooting shotguns or skeet. Maybe you want to like to be duck hunting, pheasant hunting, quail hunting, whatever, and duck hunting, like I said. If you happen to enjoy doing that, or let's say you're a fan of rifle and pistol shooting, whether it's long distance for a long gun rifle or whether you're a 22 caliber shooter, doesn't matter. If you enjoy shooting or you enjoy shotgun shooting, here's a little public service announcement because in the country of England, Scotland, and in Wales, they have just instituted what has taken them a while to get done, but it's now going to be happening over the next 36 months because in those countries, they are banning lead from being used in bullets, in pellets, and, well, that's basically what they're doing. So if you're shooting a shotgun, say for hunting, and shooting whatever you're shooting, even trap and skeet shooting, by the way, banning lead pellets. If you're a rifle shooter, whether you're shooting a deer hunting or whatever hunting, or maybe you're just a marksman like shooting the paper with a 22 caliber rifle or a pistol. Pretty soon you're going to see the same thing probably occurring in other countries. Now, granted, right now it's just started in England, Scotland, and Wales, but the environmentalists, and I can guarantee you that's who is behind this. The environmentalists are saying lead is killing the birds. And to be perfectly honest with you, in pellets, especially from shotguns, that's probably correct because the birds mistake the pellets for food. They eat the pellets, that's lead, it kills them. Now, lead fired from bullets, well, that's a totally different animal. I don't think you necessarily see animals running around digging up the dirt or sand or whatever, looking for rounds of a rifle or pistol shells, but that's not the point. The point is, lead is the problem. Now, what can be used aside from lead in rifles, pistols, and in shotguns? I'm not sure. That's not my area of expertise. Are there other artificial things like maybe something they can create? Some sort of nylon pellets or something along that line? I don't know. How about copper? Well, the problem is we're running into a copper shortage. And if you try to make all your shells and all your pellets and all your bullets made out of copper, it's going to massively drive up the price because copper is becoming, well, a little bit difficult to find. So that's where it stands, folks. So now you know what's going on. England has just instituted a ban, England, Scotland, and Wales just instituted a ban that's going to last over 36 months to get rid of lead pellets, any kind of lead in shotgun pellets, any kind of lead in rifle pellets, any kind of lead in pistol bullets. It's all coming. If it starts in England, it could go to the European continent, but it also could come to America. Don't kid yourself. Environmentalists see an opening, and they are going to take it. Be advised, you have been informed. What you decide to do and where you decide to look for a remedy is up to you. But it probably will be coming, and it will be coming sooner than you think. Well, what do you say we have a little discussion about, well, eating at a restaurant? What to eat at a restaurant and maybe what not to eat, or at least knowing what you're getting at a restaurant when you go to one. Let me tell you about a lady by the name of Arabelle Mengold. She and her family went to a restaurant, and looking down the menu, she was perusing some of the stuff the restaurant had. And she said, gee whiz, they got a steak there, and it says the pricing on the steak is MKT. MKT was the pricing on the steak. She said, well, I thought that meant $20. Turns out the price of that steak was $52. You heard me right. Steak was $52. Ordered 2 steaks. Oh, and a grilled cheese sandwich for one of the kids, I guess. The grilled cheese sandwich was $10. And oh, a small kale Caesar salad. Restaurant charged her $28. All told, her menu and her tip came to, or the whole cost of her dinner came to $159.14. $159.14. Well, so she goes public and she's on TikTok, she's on Instagram complaining about this. Well, it turns out that about 28 or 21.8 million people responded on Instagram and some 3.1 million on TikTok. Said, lady, MKT on a menu means market or market price. And anybody who knows anything about a restaurant, you go in there and you see, well, let me see what the cost of the lobster is. And usually it says MKT or market price. Pretty common because that's something they don't normally carry. And when they do, it's that they're at the behest of the suppliers. And if you haven't seen the cost of meat lately or bought hamburger or steak at a restaurant, you know the price of those things has gone dramatically because the price of cattle is up. Price of beef is up. But when you see MKT on a menu, what you do is you ask your server, hey, how much is the steak going here for? It says market pricing. What's your current market pricing? Well, the person serving you, your server, should be able to say, well, it's this price or that price or whatever it happens to be. But to blindly go ordering something, hey, I'll have that steak, not knowing what the price is and assuming the price was about $20, well, that $159.14 bill that you got proves out you weren't paying attention. So the bottom line is you go to a restaurant, you start paying attention, see exactly what it says on the menu. And if you see it says MKT or things like seasonal pricing for things like oysters or lobster or whatever, ask your server. Your server will know exactly how much it is and quote it to you. Then you won't be surprised when you get the bill. Miss Menhold apparently was very surprised when she said, well, we're a big family and we don't eat out at fancy restaurants. All the more to know when you see something you don't understand, ask. Unfortunately, she didn't, and her restaurant bill was about $160. Let that be a lesson to you as you go out and eat. You see MKT on the menu, say, how much is it? Then you'll find out. Sadly, many restaurants are having to use that even more and more for some of the regular stuff because they can't adjust the pricing every single day because the cost of what they're getting from their suppliers changes daily. And that's part of the problem with owning a restaurant because you never really know what your costs are and what you can sell it for. And when you're printing menus, it gets tough because reprinting them costs money. Now you understand how it works. Go forth and read the menu very, very carefully.